Hello everyone, it's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, I hope you all are doing okay. I guess it's this morning. Yeah, hope you guys are doing okay this morning. Things are alright. There's a fly buzzing around here. The person who came to clean the, hotel, apartment, the Airbnb, apparently left the door open. I think that's a cultural thing, but I'm not quite sure. And what I mean by that is, you know, we've always been on this thing that when you open the door, immediately shut the door because you can let flies in. And we've had several people in the house and they've tended to leave it open. So there's that. But beyond that, I hope everyone is good. Let me check my volume. Volume. They joke me because it sounds like I'm saying volume, like I'm gonna need to take a pill. All right, so if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support the patron. I say that in the beginning because I have no idea how many people make it to the end. Also, you can support through Streamlabs if you don't necessarily want to go through Super Chat and that type of stuff and you want to contribute directly. I started this video with a premise. And unfortunately or fortunately, I have to change that premise because I found that premise wasn't actually completely right. And it screws with my story altogether because I can't necessarily get the indignation that I was going to get prior. And so I'll just give the story in a different way, seeing as the story turned out to be something slightly different, potentially. A gentleman that I met, and I'm going to call him a fixer. Yeah, I'm going to call him a fixer. He got me in contact with certain people who were doing resistance stuff, at least from the standpoint of the university level in Kenya. So great. One of the other things that he told me kind of shocked me that I didn't know was that the United States was essentially hiring Kenyans for the United States military. I was like, how is the United States hiring Kenyans for the United States military? And he says, yes, it's true. Not only is it true, I can give you photos from people that I know that were friends of mine that joined the United States military from Kenya. Not Kenyan Americans, no, Kenyans. He followed this up saying, and they know they're going to be doing bad things abroad. They don't have this thing of, I'm doing this for America. They're doing ghastly things, meaning they don't have this illusion that the stuff that we're doing around the world is for the best. They know what's taking place. The wild part about this is, I looked this up myself, and he's right. Take a look at this. Let's see, display. Move this up there. And right here. U.S. Army recruitment for Africans. Kenyans in Kenya can now apply to join the United States Army. Even Brits. Now, Britain used to own Kenya and viciously exploit this country. So I'm not necessarily shocked by the British part. I mean, they have a complex relationship. But I didn't know this. I didn't know this. So you can imagine my shock when I find out that these were Kenyans doing this, meaning my source is right. So you can imagine my shock when I find out that Trump was kicking people out of the military. Upon further inspection, it may not be Trump at all. Meaning, yes, Trump may be xenophobic. Yes, Trump may be anti-immigrant. But no, it doesn't necessarily mean that he is doing it specifically this time. Let me show you what I mean. I came across a story saying that Donald Trump was kicking people out of the military. That story, further along, was further explored by Vox. Vox tends to be anti-Trump. And even Vox is like, wait a minute. Trump may not be to blame for this. And as I read through this, I thought, yeah, this sounds right. This sounds more logically true than not. So let me just give an explanation of what took place. The United States military had a policy that they would, or a program that would allow immigrants to, there were certain skills that we wanted. So medical skills, the ability to relate to other people in the field, that type of stuff. And so in exchange for those skills, meaning in exchange for immigrants and people from other countries joining the military, and you can say allowing us to utilize those skill sets, we would allow them access into the country. Essentially, they would get a fast track to citizenship. Now, citizenship in the United States is somewhat of a complicated affair and it's somewhat difficult to pull off, and it takes a very long time to do. So this was this kind of expedited process in exchange for military service. Obama froze this program. Now, they froze the program because there were problems with security, meaning some of the countries that the people were coming from weren't the friendliest of countries. And there was this problem of being able to vet the individuals who were bringing into the country to ensure that those people weren't going to essentially carry out some kind of terrorist attack. If we can't necessarily identify people who are threats to us in countries where we might have done bad things, or countries where they were, however, significant resentment against us, you can understand this would be somewhat of a security risk. It's possible, very possible, that it wasn't Trump saying kill it, that it might have been more along the lines of not approving the waiver, or not getting rid of allowing the program to just die on the vine. And this is kind of weird because all of this is kind of just coinciding with the grossness of Trump. And then you see this take place and you think, oh my God, maybe Trump has something to do with kicking immigrants out the military. It may not be that way. The thing is, when Vox tried to send a response to see if they would give them feedback on why are you kicking people out of the military, again, has been stonewalling on this and not necessarily giving an explanation, which leads more to this idea of, is the White House involved or is something else going on in this process? Needless to say, there are thousands or over 1,000 of immigrants in the military that don't necessarily know whether or not they're going to be allowed to stay in the military. And yeah, many are not given a reason as to why they're being kicked out. But the long and short of it is, this program was in effect during the Obama years, and there were people that were being kicked out of the military during the Obama years. Nobody cared about that. And part of the problem is it takes so long for the vetting process, and some of these countries don't necessarily have the best of techniques in order to know whether, like for example, if somebody says, oh God, I was about to get racist for a moment. Obako Uchengo, and he's in, let's say, some village in Kenya. How is the military supposed to vet some random guy in a village in Kenya and whether or not that person is, and let's say the person is not Kenyan. Let's say the person is American with a certain Kenyan heritage where he immigrated into this country. How do you vet these people if you don't necessarily have access to records, or records aren't necessarily kept all that well in their countries? Security issue. It's very possible that all of this is a security issue and not Donald Trump being gross. Let's look at the article. If there's an overlap, one of the things the article is kind of making the point of, if the amount of time it takes to vet, the people join the military service, that's the other odd part. They're in the military during the vetting process. So it's like, while this is taking place, these guys may be going through basic training. And if it's not finished in a time period, they will be tapped on the shoulder and say, you need to leave the military. This may all be administrative. This isn't me saying it because I like Trump. And like I said, I had an entire story planned, kind of making this point that how are you recruiting people from abroad to fight in these wars while simultaneously kicking immigrants out the military? Not so much, or at the very least, potentially not so much. We'll know more as the story progresses, but right now, it's possible that it's not the case at all. Trump may not be to blame for immigrants being booted from the military. So I read part of this. The part that's interesting is here. But then in 2016, Obama froze MAVNI, that's the name of the program, over national security concerns. This was under Obama. freezing this. Again, nobody cared because he was less gross. The Pentagon worried that some of the recruits could potentially have connections to terrorist organizations or foreign spy agencies. Recruits were also booted out during the Obama years. The Pentagon wouldn't confirm or deny that the military had accidentally brought interpersonal persons who fit that description, but Major Carla Gleason, a Pentagon spokesman, told me there are multiple security concerns with the recruitment process back in 2016. The program had unacceptable levels of risk that we couldn't mitigate, she continued. The Defense Department extended the program for 1 year as background checks proceeded, but the Trump administration didn't renew the extension 12 months later. That means, as of now, the MAVNI program no longer exists. I'm putting the article at the bottom. This is something to be fascinating. I didn't know this program existed. I knew that we were bringing people in order to get. I knew we were getting people to fight for us, but I guess I didn't know on the granular level how that looked in an actual country. You know, Kenya at one point was owned by the British Empire, and I think it was 1963. The British Empire gave Kenya back to Kenya. Britain had Kenya soldiers trained fighting for it also, just like Rome had soldiers trained and fighting for Rome. It's amazing how these patterns replicate themselves. And in replicating themselves, however, the people in power never necessarily look and say, hey, we're fitting a pattern of empires that collapsed. When I talk to the Kenyans here, especially people who have ties to Muslims, we're not favored. We're not favored. Part of it has to do with our, you could say, alliance with Israel and their open-air ghetto of the Palestinians, and part of it has to do with the murdering and the slaughtering of Muslims all throughout the Middle East. Those things are not necessarily favored. If you're going to open up a recruitment center and you're going to allow people to come into the country to fight for the military, the argument that it's an unacceptable risk is not necessarily an insane argument. And seeing as the program was froze under, or given, as you could say, an extension of maybe 1 year, it's not Trump kicking them out. It seems more like just not being renewed. There's a difference in those things. Well, there's a difference in those things or not. There's still over like 1,000 recruits that have no idea what they're going to be or how this is going to turn out for them, meaning they too could be kicked out of the military. So, who's here? Who's here? When I served on a ship, which had a crew of about 180 back in 2001, we had 22 African guys on a crew. One was from Ghana and the other was from Nigeria. Both were good dudes. I love Kenya. I know that I can't necessarily understand the Kenyan experience, so don't misunderstand me. This is not one of those things of, I know what it means to be a Kenyan. You know, not nothing like that. I don't even eat the food per se, so I would never own up to this idea of being Kenyan. But my experience may be slightly different being African American, and being in a place where everyone looks like you. It's just strange. Like being in Europe, you're a minority, just like you're a minority in America. Even though that's your country, you're a minority in that particular country. And at some point, I would hope people would get over this race thing, both sides, for whites and for blacks. I don't know how that looks. I have no idea how that happens. I would love if at some point everyone says, how do we just make this even? How do we make it even? Let's have a meeting, come together. How do we make this even so we move forward without using this shit as a reason for conflict? I have no idea how that happens. I don't know how that works. Being here and seeing this, it's fascinating. It's an odd experience for me, and for me, odd is I live for odd. I like it. yeah, it's a strange experience, man. It's not a bad one, just a strange one for me. That has to be wild as fuck for sure. Yeah, it is. Like, you look at billboards and they look like you. Like, you look at the politicians in parliament and everybody looks like you. And not just that, you're in a completely different continent, in a completely different country, and the people who you're interacting with, their mannerisms are different. Like, the way they hold themselves is a little different. Maybe the expressions may be a little bit different, and like they'll hold their hands or stuff that maybe just be regional. But they look like family in many respects, and that's a little wild and a little strange when you're in a completely different place. And don't get me wrong, this is not this kind of thing of everything is perfect. For fuck's sake, no. Corruption is fucking rampant, and it's not even where, you know, they don't know that it's corrupt. They will tell you on the street, every person that I've talked to, our government is corrupt as fuck. Doesn't matter who you talk to, all of them will tell you the exact same thing. Our government is corrupt as fuck. They understand it, they just don't think they can do anything about it. I feel a kinship with them because I feel the same way. My government is corrupt as fuck. I understand it, I can't do anything about it. I don't know how to do anything about it. So yeah, it's fascinating, man. It's a good experience. I guess my oddity here is we're doing a trajectory of other empires. Like, and I know I'm reading this book, Chalmers Johnson, so I'm more in mind to this. Like, it's one of those things that whatever you're reading, or whatever you're looking at, when you're assimilating it, everything is kind of put through that lens. But it doesn't make it wrong. And yeah, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. All right, I'm going to end this here. If you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys.